What happens when a 12-year-old boy walks into a luxury hotel and the manager decides to humiliate him in front of everyone? Today's story shows how dignity, courage, and intelligence can turn humiliation into an unforgettable lesson. Stay tuned to see how one young boy changed the lives of everyone in that lobby forever. David Washington, at just 12 years old, stepped into the marble-clad lobby of the Grand Plaza Hotel with a quiet confidence that belied his age. His worn sneakers squeaked softly against the polished floor as he approached the golden reception desk. His faded backpack slung casually over one shoulder and an old, cracked cell phone clutched in his hand. The grand chandelier above reflected the afternoon sunlight, casting patterns across the pristine surfaces, but David barely noticed. He had one purpose: to check into the presidential suite, a week-long stay he had reserved weeks ago. The slip of paper with the reservation details, crumpled from being carried in his pocket, was the only thing he offered the towering, gleaming desk as proof. Kevin Martinez, the hotel's manager, leaned back in his chair, a smirk spreading across his face as he eyed the boy. 15 years at the Grand Plaza had taught him how to spot what he considered imposters, and in his mind, this 12-year-old with threadbare clothes was a perfect example. "I'll give you the best suite if you have the balance," he said, his voice dripping with amusement loud enough for the surrounding guests to hear. Laughter spilled from Kevin's mouth and heads turned. Elegant women in fur coats whispered behind gloved hands, executives froze mid-phone call, and even the doorman stopped polishing the gold fixtures to watch. David's lips pressed together, his calm gaze never wavering. "Sir, I have a reservation," he said evenly, sliding the crumpled paper across the marble counter. His voice was steady, each word carefully measured, a quiet assertion that he belonged there as much as anyone. Kevin picked up the paper with exaggerated disdain, waving it as if it were contaminated. "Presidential suite for a week, kid. Do you know how much that costs?" $40,000, he announced theatrically, his tone echoing against the marble walls. "Where did you get this name? Did you steal it from a guest?" The manager's laughter grew louder, and he motioned to his colleagues behind the counter. "Guys, check this out. We have a little con artist here. I bet he doesn't even know what a bank account is." The lobby seemed to hold its breath. David's fists clenched subtly inside his jacket pockets, but his composure never broke. Inside, memories of 3 days earlier flickered across his mind. The call from his lawyer, Mr. Morrison, informing him of a secret inheritance from a grandfather he had never known existed. The formal voice had been precise, almost solemn. "David, there's something about your inheritance you need to know. Your grandfather kept this secret for a reason. You are to be informed only now, at age 12. That moment had changed everything, but David did not let it show. Back in the present, Kevin continued his performance, his eyes alight with sadistic pleasure. "Look at him," he sneered. 12 years old, alone, wanting the best suite in the hotel. Next thing, he'll claim he's a billionaire's son. The guests watched with varying reactions. Some chuckled nervously, others frowned, and a few stared in silence, sensing the cruelty. David, however, stood tall, unshaken by the mockery. In his eyes was a serenity that Kevin could not decipher, a quiet strength cultivated through experiences far harsher than a hotel manager's laughter. "Mr. Martinez," David said, enunciating the manager's name as he read it from the badge. "Can I speak to your supervisor?" Kevin's laughter erupted again, louder than before. "My supervisor? Kid, I am the supervisor here. This is my house, and you," he gestured dramatically, "are just a lost child who shouldn't even be here." But David's gaze sharpened. He had grown up in circumstances that demanded resilience. Orphaned at 7 and raised by a grandfather who had worked tirelessly as a janitor, David had learned that dignity was not measured by clothing, wealth, or social standing, but by how one responded when faced with contempt. Kevin clapped loudly, drawing more attention. "Attention, ladies and gentlemen. Our young guest is going to explain exactly how he intends to pay $40,000 for a week. Are you going to sell lemonade on the corner?" Laughter echoed again, but David remained unmoved. He took a deep breath, his hand still in his pocket, concealing a black card that Kevin assumed was nothing more than a childish toy. "Mr. Martinez," David said, his tone calm yet sharp, "may I ask you a question? Do you believe appearances always tell the truth about a person?" Kevin frowned, irritated by the unexpected question. "What does that have to do with anything, kid?" David continued, his voice steady. "Because I'm looking at you, a man behind a counter, acting as if you own this place, yet your authority is borrowed. And here I am, a 12-year-old boy, underestimated by everyone in this room. Does that seem fair to you?" The sudden silence was deafening. The laughter stopped. Kevin's smirk faltered, replaced by confusion and a flicker of unease. For the first time, the arrogance that had fueled his career faced something it could not control. Composure, confidence, and intellect far beyond its assumptions. David Washington, a boy in worn sneakers and a faded backpack, had begun to turn humiliation into quiet power, and the first cracks in Kevin Martinez's performance were already visible. David reached into his pocket and slowly revealed a matte black card, its surface absorbing the light of the marble lobby like it had a presence of its own. Kevin Martinez's laughter erupted, louder than ever, as if he had just witnessed a joke at the boy's expense. "Seriously? A black plastic card?" he said, holding it up for all to see. "Did you make this at home out of cardboard?" Guests exchanged uncertain glances, some hiding smiles while others frowned at Kevin's mockery. Kevin waved the card dramatically. "Look at this, folks. Our little businessman has his own plastic money. Incredible." David's expression remained unreadable. He ignored Kevin completely and addressed Lisa, the night supervisor with decades of experience in luxury hospitality. "Miss, could you check this card in the system?" he asked quietly, with a calm precision that made Kevin bristle. Lisa's eyes widened as she recognized the card. She leaned slightly toward her colleague and whispered something. But Kevin, engrossed in his performance, was oblivious. He chuckled arrogantly, turning the card over and over. "Let me guess," he said to the boy. "You're going to tell me it has an unlimited balance and that you're the son of some secret billionaire. What a creative imagination." David's lips curved into a faint smile, but it carried no warmth. He placed the card on the counter, motionless, and reached for his old cell phone. "Actually," he said, "I'll make a phone call to clarify the situation. I want everyone to hear this." Kevin laughed even harder, shaking his head. "Call who? Your babysitter? To ask if you can have the suite." He sneered, oblivious to the gravity of what was about to happen. David dialed the number and put the phone on speaker, the polished tones of the Grand Plaza echoing against the walls. After 2 rings, a firm, professional voice answered. "Morrison and Associates, Dr. Richard Morrison speaking." David's voice, calm and deliberate, carried through the lobby. "Dr. Morrison, this is David Washington. I am at the Grand Plaza Hotel and would like you to confirm the details of the account opened in my name." Murmurs ran through the guests, their curiosity piqued. Kevin's laughter faltered, replaced by an uneasy glance at the surrounding patrons. Dr. Morrison's voice grew warmer, yet professional. "David, everything is in order. Management treating you properly?" David continued, speaking clearly so everyone could hear. "Could you remind the guests here exactly how much was deposited in my account yesterday?" A pause followed, and the lobby seemed to hold its collective breath. Then the answer came, crisp and firm. "An initial deposit of $15 million has been made, stemming from the testamentary inheritance left by your biological grandfather, Jonathan Washington. Additional assets and properties are currently being processed and will be available in the coming weeks." The marble floor suddenly felt colder to Kevin, though he didn't realize it. His smirk had vanished, replaced by a pale, trembling disbelief. $15 million. The words repeated themselves in his mind like a drumbeat he could not escape. Lisa stepped closer, her own breath caught. Even the most distracted guests had stopped fiddling with their phones, the shock settling like a heavy fog across the lobby. Kevin fumbled, attempting to rationalize, muttering, "It has to be a system error. A child can't have this. It has to be." His voice trailed off as the realization deepened. David hung up the phone, maintaining the same quiet composure that had unnerved Kevin from the beginning. "Now, Mr. Martinez," he said softly, "how about we check that card in your system?" I am sure you are eager to confirm the truth." Kevin's hands shook visibly as he held the matte black card, the weight of its legitimacy suddenly pressing down on him far heavier than he could have imagined. Guests whispered among themselves, the words 15 million, spreading quickly, and Kevin's earlier showmanship was replaced by panic. Lisa leaned closer, quietly explaining the significance to Kevin, who still refused to listen fully. "This card is an exclusive black card from Zurich International Private Bank," she murmured. "It is only issued to clients with accounts exceeding $10 million. Kevin's ego, which had driven the entire humiliation, now worked against him. Every gesture he had made, every laugh, every mocking comment, suddenly meaningless. The guests' curious stares had transformed into anticipatory silence, waiting for the unraveling of the spectacle they had witnessed for so long. David watched all of it with measured patience, his eyes calm, his hands still resting lightly on the counter. No anger, no fear, only quiet confidence that radiated through the room. Every subtle glance, every unspoken word emphasized the shift in power. The boy who had seemed so ordinary moments before had revealed a force of intellect, wealth, and composure that Kevin could not anticipate, nor could he control. The dynamic in the lobby had shifted completely. Kevin Martinez, the man who had been the puppet master moments ago, now stood trapped by his own arrogance, confronted by the silent authority of a 12-year-old who had already mastered the art of strategic restraint. The atmosphere was taut with expectation. David's calmness, paired with the knowledge of his vast inheritance, was no longer just a revelation. It was a turning point. Guests and staff alike could sense it. The humiliation intended for David had ricocheted back upon Kevin, and the boy's quiet assertion of power left everyone aware that appearances are deceiving, and underestimating someone can be the gravest mistake of all. In that lobby, the first cracks of Kevin Martinez's arrogance appeared, and David Washington, in worn sneakers and a simple backpack, had begun to rewrite the rules of engagement in a game he had always known he could win. Kevin Martinez's hands trembled as he stared at the screen, unable to comprehend the numbers that blinked back at him. $15 million. It was no error, no prank, no exaggeration. His mind raced, fumbling for an explanation, any rationalization to save the crumbling facade he had so proudly displayed. It must be a mistake," he stammered, glancing at Lisa, whose expression betrayed both shock and restrained frustration. But David Washington, calm as ever, did not waver. He placed a hand lightly on the counter, his gaze steady, and addressed Kevin with a voice that carried the weight of quiet authority. "Mr. Martinez, your assumptions, your mockery, and your laughter in this lobby have been based on prejudice and arrogance. It is not a mistake. It is reality. Perhaps now you understand." Kevin's face drained of color as the echoes of his earlier cruelty returned to haunt him. The lobby, which had been a theater for his entertainment, now felt like a tribunal where he himself was the accused. Guests whispered, their initial curiosity transforming into judgment. The murmurs spread. 15 million? That boy has $15 million. An elderly couple glanced at each other, disbelief in their eyes. Kevin's former spectators now watched with a mix of astonishment and moral clarity. Every gesture, every smirk, every sarcastic comment he had made moments ago now reflected back upon him like a mirror of disgrace. David, unhurried, reached again for his cell phone. "Dr. Morrison," he said, speaking calmly into the speaker, "Mr. Martinez has been challenging the legitimacy of my account and humiliating me publicly. Could you please provide your assessment?" A brief pause followed. Then Dr. Morrison's voice came through, firm and deliberate, carrying authority that Kevin could neither ignore nor dispute. "David, this constitutes racial discrimination, public humiliation of a minor, and potential defamation. Mr. Martinez and the Grand Plaza Hotel could face serious legal consequences if this behavior continues unchecked. You are fully protected in asserting your rights." The silence that followed was suffocating, the gravity of the situation pressing down on the once arrogant manager. Kevin's attempts at denial faltered. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words felt hollow, meaningless in the presence of the boy's composure and the undeniable confirmation from the lawyer. David continued, his voice steady, each word deliberate. "When you humiliated me, Mr. Martinez, did you consider my family? Did you think about the impact of your actions, or the dignity that every person deserves regardless of their appearance, age, or financial status?" The question hung in the air, a quiet hammer striking at Kevin's ego. The guests and staff absorbed it, sensing the lesson beneath the confrontation. True strength and respect are earned, not assumed. At that precise moment, the heavy doors of the lobby opened and James Richardson, the general manager of the Grand Plaza, entered. His presence immediately shifted the energy in the room. He strode purposefully toward Kevin, his eyes blazing with controlled anger. "Martinez, my office. Now," he commanded, his voice echoing through the marble hall. Kevin's protests were feeble, his usual theatrics gone, replaced by the stark reality of accountability. Guests watched silently as security discreetly approached, ready to escort him. The boy, who had entered timidly, burdened only by the courage of a child and the weight of an inheritance, now stood untouched, dignified, and in full control of the moral high ground. David remained in the lobby, his posture calm, unshaken by the commotion around him. He observed the fall of Kevin's ego with a quiet patience, recognizing that true power does not come from raising one's voice or exerting dominance, but from maintaining dignity in the face of aggression. The once lively lobby, filled with laughter and judgment, had transformed into a classroom where the lessons of respect, humility, and the danger of underestimating others were being learned in real time. Kevin was escorted out, his face a mask of shame, his career in ruins within the span of an hour. 15 years of professional pride and accumulated authority had been obliterated by a 12-year-old boy whose only weapons were composure, intelligence, and quiet confidence. The security doors closed behind him, leaving a stunned silence that was punctuated only by whispered reflections from the guests and staff. He humiliated the child," murmured one receptionist. "And yet the boy remains calm," said another. The stark reversal of roles was undeniable. James Richardson approached David, bowing slightly with a formal courtesy that immediately conveyed respect. "Mr. Washington, please accept our sincerest apologies. This behavior is unacceptable. Your dignity has been compromised, and we will ensure proper measures are taken." David nodded gently, his expression serene. "Thank you, Mr. Richardson. I hope this serves as a lesson, not just to the staff, but to anyone who judges others based on appearances or assumptions." As the lobby returned to a semblance of normalcy, the impact of the afternoon's events lingered. Guests reflected on what they had witnessed. A child treated with contempt had revealed more strength, grace, and authority than the adult who sought to belittle him. Staff members exchanged glances, realizing that humility and respect are not optional. They are essential. In that moment, David Washington exemplified a lesson far more powerful than any monetary inheritance: the quiet power of integrity and the unshakable confidence of one who refuses to accept humiliation as a norm. David Washington walked through the corridors of the Grand Plaza Hotel with a quiet confidence that seemed to transform the very air around him. James Richardson, the general manager, personally accompanied him, carrying David's worn backpack as if it were a treasure of incalculable value. "Mr. Washington, please accept our deepest apologies for the treatment you received," Richardson said, opening the double doors to the presidential suite with a flourish that carried both respect and genuine regret. The suite itself was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. A grand piano gleamed under the soft lighting, and a dining area large enough for a dozen guests showcased the opulence of the space. David stepped in calmly, his gaze sweeping the room as if he had always belonged in such grandeur. Yet his demeanor remained unpretentious, measured, and in complete control. Meanwhile, on the lower floors, Kevin Martinez faced the consequences of his arrogance. His personal desk, once a command center of authority, was now a station for cleaning duties, observed by colleagues whose expressions ranged from pity to quiet satisfaction. 15 years of professional achievement had dissolved in an afternoon of unchecked ego and prejudice. Kevin's humiliation was no longer private. It had become a cautionary tale in the hotel industry, circulated among managers and employees alike. Lisa, whose composure and experience had been pivotal during the incident, was temporarily promoted to oversee the front desk. Her eyes, however, often flicked toward the presidential suite, acknowledging the quiet boy who had orchestrated this. Reversal of fortune without a word of anger, without a single display of frustration. News of the incident spread rapidly. Journalists arrived at the hotel, eager to cover the story of discrimination and humiliation at one of the city's most prestigious establishments. Reporters interviewed staff, guests, and hotel management, each account emphasizing the lessons learned about prejudice, respect, and the dangers of judging someone by appearances. Kevin's name became synonymous with arrogance and poor judgment, while David's composure, intelligence, and strategic patience earned admiration from all corners. His story was no longer simply about a hotel reservation. It had evolved into a national lesson on dignity and moral fortitude. David, however, remained focused on the future. The inheritance that had initially been a source of quiet empowerment became a tool for broader change. Within weeks, he partnered with Dr. Morrison to establish a foundation aimed at providing educational resources and mentorship programs for vulnerable children. "I want other kids to never feel what I felt when they are underestimated or humiliated," David explained. "But I also want them to know that when life challenges them, their response defines them far more than the opinions of those who seek to diminish their worth." The foundation became a platform for teaching resilience, confidence, and the quiet power of intelligence combined with dignity. Back at the Grand Plaza, the culture of the hotel began to shift. Mandatory training on diversity, respect, and proper guest interactions was implemented across all departments. Staff members reflected on the events, understanding that their perception of guests could no longer be dictated by appearance, age, or assumed social status. The incident served as a permanent reminder that arrogance can blind, but humility, vigilance, and a commitment to respect create environments where true professionalism thrives. David's own journey had transformed him in ways that wealth alone could not provide. He returned to his modest apartment in Queens with a newfound understanding of influence, responsibility, and the quiet strength that comes from facing adversity with composure. The lessons of the Grand Plaza, humiliation, revelation, and triumph, became part of his philosophy. That true power lies not in proving others wrong through anger or confrontation, but in allowing integrity, intelligence, and patience to reveal the truth. Weeks later, David observed the first cohort of children benefiting from his foundation, their faces full of curiosity, hope, and determination. He taught them that dignity is unshakable, that respect is earned through actions rather than appearances, and that even in moments of injustice, there is a path to turn adversity into opportunity. His own experiences, humiliation at the hands of a prejudiced adult, the revelation of hidden wealth, and the calculated assertion of his rights, served as living examples for the next generation. The story of the 12-year-old boy who had walked into the Grand Plaza and faced the full force of prejudice had ended not in vengeance, but in transformation. Kevin Martinez's downfall had been complete. The hotel's policies had improved, and countless witnesses had internalized a lesson that no lecture or training manual could replicate. David's calm intelligence, strategic foresight, and unwavering dignity had converted a moment of potential despair into a legacy of empowerment. In the quiet of his presidential suite, David gazed out over the city, the sunlight reflecting off the towering skyscrapers below. The journey that began with a simple hotel reservation had evolved into a testament to patience, intelligence, and moral fortitude. He had not only reclaimed his dignity, but had reshaped the perceptions and behaviors of those around him. And as he looked toward the future, he knew one truth above all, that humility, quiet strength, and perseverance can transform not only A single life, but an entire world of possibilities for those who follow.